Thank you, Joanne. Mr. President, fellow ministers, ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to be here this evening at the Chamber President's annual banquet. Mr. President, I thank you for the invitation. Given tonight's theme and the dress code, which I saw as glitz and glamour, I know that your first choice as government speaker was an easy one. Who's that laughing? The Stormont Minister who epitomises glitz, who personifies glamour. The decision was made for you. Arlene sends her apologies. Since taking office in July, I have to say that with all the business breakfasts and the working lunches and the awards dinners, I haven't found aiding economic recovery or balancing the budget our biggest challenge. It's controlling my waistline. All the hospitality that you receive, and which is part and parcel of the job, worries me that it does nothing for the unfair perception of politicians as freeloaders. It reminds me of the barbers that opened recently in my constituency. Now, this barber had a very, very different business model to the one that we would all be used to. On its first day of opening, the local butcher came in for a haircut. The butcher had his hair trimmed and then asked, "How much?" "Nothing," said the barber. "Nothing," replied the butcher. "Yes," said the barber, "I do things differently." So the next morning, when the barber arrived at work, there was a box waiting for him at the door. In it were a dozen sirloin steaks. So later that day, then, the local baker came in for a haircut. He too asked how much and was told by the barber, "Nothing." The next morning, sitting in the doorway, waiting for the barber when he arrived, was a box containing a dozen cream buns. Later that day, a local politician came in and got a haircut. He too was bemused when he was told by the barber that he had nothing to pay. The next morning, there, waiting in the doorway, was a dozen politicians. Seriously, can I take this opportunity, though, to commend the Northern Ireland Chamber of Commerce for the work that it does. Your Growing Something Brilliant campaign has been a fantastic showcase of the best of Northern Ireland business. It has encouraged businesses to grow and has illustrated how we in government can help. I'm also very pleased that your Chief Executive, Anne McGregor, has joined our independent review panel, which will give the Enterprise Minister and I advice on how our banks are financing local businesses. I also want to congratulate the Chamber for its focus this evening on our burgeoning creative industries sector, and for choosing to bring tonight's event to the excellent Titanic Belfast. Both the theme and the venue resonate with what I want to talk about this evening. Creative industries and tourism are two parts of the new economy we're building in Northern Ireland. Who would have dreamed that Hollywood blockbuster movies could be made in Belfast where ships were once built? Or that an organisation like HBO could film Game of Thrones, one of its biggest TV series ever, here in Northern Ireland? I can remember the doubters predicting failure for Titanic Belfast before the doors had even opened. Over 1 million visitors later, it is a resounding success and an icon of a reborn Belfast. Along with ICT, financial services, advanced engineering and agri-foods, they are some of the sectors that are driving the new Northern Ireland economy. A sector that isn't considered part of our economic future, however, is the public sector. It's one thing that government ensures that the skills we need to compete in the global fight for investment and jobs are provided through our universities and our colleges or government-backed training programs, or that government invests in infrastructure like the A26 or new regional children's hospital that provides a pipeline of work for our construction industry. It's quite another that over a third of our workforce is directly employed by the public sector, or that government spending is 2/3 of our GVA. We all know the orthodoxy. Northern Ireland is bedeviled by a big, bloated and bureaucratic government, one that is an impediment to economic growth, a drag on the economy and not a driver. Big, bloated, bureaucratic. They're the words we often associate with our government, not words like innovator, investor and risk taker. But that's what our government frequently is: an innovator, an investor and a risk taker. Would the private sector alone have built Titanic Belfast? Without the almost £50 million of public money invested, it's unlikely that this venue and the benefits it has brung would be a reality today. HBO are here in Northern Ireland in part because of government assistance and tax breaks, as well as the public investment in the paint hall. There is ample evidence of government, especially in Northern Ireland, intervening early, developing an enabling environment, de-risking strategically significant projects, and creating the conditions for business to flourish. In those other key sectors I mentioned, ICT, financial services, advanced engineering, and agri-foods, we also see proof of positive government intervention that has unlocked valuable investments. Northern Ireland is fast becoming a global centre for ICT financial services and attracting companies of the calibre of the New York Stock Exchange, Citi, and Allstate, in no small part because of the excellent connectivity and telecommunications infrastructure brought about by government spending on the likes of Project Kelvin and working with BT on developing our broadband network. In agri-foods, Arlene and I have recently launched a new agri-food loan scheme which will see government guarantee loans to farmers that they were struggling to get from their banks so that they can avail of the opportunities generated by the decisions of the major supermarkets to source more meat products in the UK. We recently celebrated the opening of Bombardier's new composite wing factory. That investment, the biggest in Northern Ireland's history, was secured after £135 million support from government. Our economy is not only dominated by the public sector, it is in no small measure driven by it too. Whether that is good or bad, healthy or unhealthy, for better or worse, it is a reality. I don't want to worry anybody. I haven't abandoned capitalism. I haven't become, my hair may be red, but I haven't become a communist. But I am a realist. Whilst it may be undeniable, it is not unalterable. I absolutely want to see our economy better balanced with a private sector that is bigger, more dynamic, more competitive, and more export-orientated. I want to be the finance minister who reduces our corporation tax rate, who presides over a procurement system that puts as much of the £3 billion of public sector spends annually in the hands of local companies as possible, and who works with business and our banks to improve access to finance so that local businesses can get the credit they need to expand and employ more people. It is the private sector that adds value, creates the wealth, and generates new jobs. But we will go nowhere economically if we shrink the size of the state just for the sake of it. Not only do we need to reassess the existing role of the state as an investor and risk taker, we also need to continue to reinvent and reform the role of the state as an innovator and enabler. We shouldn't be afraid of our public sector. Instead, we should embrace its potential as a driver of the economy, as an entity that can inspire innovation and entrepreneurship. Envisage an economy where the public sector drives the economy forward and doesn't drag it down. Imagine a public sector that's every bit as innovative and creative as the economy we want for Northern Ireland. I firmly believe that a reformed public sector is one of the cornerstones of any vibrant and dynamic economy. Clearly, assets like skills and infrastructure and telecommunications, which government invests in, are critical, but surely a strong, smart government is also a stimulus for economic development. Entrepreneurial governments attract investment. That's one of the reasons I have established a public sector reform division within DFP. It will spend its time examining new and innovative ways in which we can embrace technology to improve the standard of service delivery, how we can focus government activity on attaining meaningful outcomes for our country, encourage collaboration across the public sector, and spend more of our money on preventing problems from materialising in the first place. In short, its job is to scope out international best practice in the public sector and inject into our own the urgency of being innovative. Making our public sector more efficient and effective and innovative mirrors places like Singapore and the Nordic countries, whose economies are the sort of competitive and export-orientated economies we are trying to build in Northern Ireland. Enterprising governments produce enterprising economies. This isn't a matter of public or private, or public versus private. It's about building a genuine, proper public-private partnership. We need a government that ensures that the fundamental foundations upon which economic recovery will be built are in place. But we need it to be more efficient, and we need it to be more effective. Mr. President, let's start to see our public sector as something that can be an advantage, working with business to build a better economy Northern Ireland so badly needs. Thank you very much.